we've done it on the pharmacy side. So I've heard you guys have been doing it on the medical side, is direct contracting.
Right.
So we really promote that with independent pharmacies, saying, hey, if you can go to your local employer and direct
100%.
contract.
Okay.
Now they can't do it because the big three
won't let them do that, right?
Right.
But I can, or you can, right? And so I've called on, I don't know how many employers, state agencies, municipalities, and telling them just effectively, if you're working with the big three PBM, you're doing it wrong. When I'm having these conversations with the states, and I've talked to probably the 6 largest states already, I basically tell them, do you want the story of your administration to be, you help put independent pharmacies in your state out of business?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be able to go around there and say, hey, look, we're doing, we moved our business from this big three PBM so that so you're not underwater on the scripts that for companies that work through them, and you actually make money, you don't lose on the fill, and you make money on a fill fee.
Yeah.
See, what I tell them, I don't push from the legislative perspective, right? Because that's the hard part. What I push is, if you as the state do business with a big three PBM, the legislation doesn't matter. Right, because you've already lost it. If you tell in your state, you tell the agencies they can't work with the big three because they're ripping you off and they can't reimburse. So you have control of that. You don't need to get a legislature to pass that. You don't have to play the politics of that. That's just doing what's in the best interest of your budget and the wellness of your citizens. And from that conversation, it's like, oh, I literally have direct control over this without having to play the politics game. Yeah. And so that's really why, even though you've seen us at the White House, you haven't seen me push, okay, let's get a lobbyist, let's do that. Because I'd rather spend that time going to big employers and the states and everything and say, just change who you do business with. Otherwise, you're responsible for putting those independent pharmacies out of business, and that's good, And oh, by the way, all those rebates you're working with in your state, and you've got X dollar deductible, well, those rebates aren't paid for by the manufacturers. Those rebates are paid for by your sickest residents, right? Because there's an inverse relationship between how much you get in rebate and how high your deductible is. And do you really want to be governor when somebody dies because they couldn't afford to pay up to their deductible and get their medication?
And to your point, we always encourage our clients that, hey, if we're doing our job correctly, you really shouldn't get or receive rebates from us, right? Because we're being as proactive as possible in making sure you're getting the most cost-effective medication at the time of dispense.
The tipping point comes when we get, the 5 largest states and 10 of the largest employers to stop using the big three.
Right.
You look at the legislation and, they're trying to do the right thing, banning rebates, making rebates pass through, banning spread pricing. Mark's absolutely right. You got to tear out the problem by the root, and that really starts with, the employers becoming educated on what their benefits are. Like everyone complains about airline travel, but everyone always buys the cheapest tickets. Sure. Yeah. And that's basically what's happening here is not that people are going to the lowest cost provider, but they're going to the exact same provider over and over who's ripping them off.
And then how do you think you get away from, because I completely agree with you, and you also have a really great analogy about a Toyota Corolla, an AWP rates. And so I'm curious how you foresee in the future getting away from that. Is it direct contracting? Is it, just utilizing some kind of acquisition cost list model for everything? How do you get away from that mentality from employers and even from, employee benefits advisors saying, I can get you the best guarantee for rates and rebates, and that's why you should go with one of the larger guys?
Yeah, just to give some insight into what the Toyota analogy is. So I always say, imagine you're shopping for a Toyota Camry, but you hate negotiating. It's miserable. The dealer's sleazy, and someone comes up to you and says, I will negotiate the price of the Toyota Camry for you. Don't worry about it. I do it in bulk. I'm going to get a better price for you anyway. All I ask is 10% of whatever discount I negotiate. That's my cut. And you're like, okay, I hate negotiating. I'll do it.
That sounds great.
That sounds great. But then, the person comes back to you a week later, and it's fantastic news, amazing news. I got you 90% off your Toyota Camry. And you're like, that's amazing. How'd you do it? And they're like, don't think anything of it. And you come to find out the list price of the Toyota is $1 million. And you're stuck paying $100,000 plus 10% of the negotiated discount. So you're out at $190,000 for the Toyota Camry. plus the negotiator gets to keep the difference between the $100,000 fake price and the $30,000 real price. So that's the spread price plus the rebate percentage. And those numbers seem crazy and hyperbolic, but for products like imatinib, for chronic myelogenous leukemia, those are the actual ratios. List price of the drug, $10,000. Actual adjudicated price for most of the big PBMs, somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000. On our website, the actual price with our markup, with the pharmacist fee, is $30. So like those ratios, yeah, they actually hold. And you know, I think it's really
That's such a great analogy.
Oh, thanks, Mark. But yeah, I think the only real solution is going out there and educating all of the CEOs, all of the CFOs, all of the human resources folks about the reality of the situation. Because I think, you know, Mark was let me sit in on a meeting he had with the human resource team of a Fortune 10 company, and it was 3 people, and they just weren't aware of the ways that they were getting ripped off. And most of the conversation was actually just education. Yeah. Like, this is what's happening. Is there any reason you're sticking with a big 3 PBM? Is there anything a small, transparent PBM can't do that a big 3 PBM can do?
Yeah, think about it. I mean, I'll ask you guys, what's the one thing or 2 things that a big 3 PBM does that you guys can't do?
Nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you go into these sponsors and you talk to them, it's like, look, you're not giving up anything. Mm-hmm. In fact, you're saving. But again, so when we talk to these sponsors, these self-insured employers, that's the big question. Because strategically, and what I tell them is it's not how much money you save now, because a lot of them will put out an RFP that's done by a consultant that already has their hooks in with a big 3 PBM. And so, you know, we have a little list of things to test to show how little they care about you. We'll tell them, you know, just call them and ask if you can add cost plus drugs, you know, to your network. Of course, no. Call them and see if you can get copies of your claims immediately because they're your claim. No. Are they going to charge you? All this shit that you guys already know, right?
You know, I was looking at one for spread pricing, your Camry example, right? They were, you know, they paid $55 for a drug, they were reimbursed $60. The employer was charged $215, right? So they ended up losing money when it comes to all the labor.
Yeah, it's insane, right? It's insane. We're going to improve your wellness, and we're going to make it so that you're not dependent on these big 3 PBMs, because it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse, because they're always looking for ways to charge you. And you know, and here's one little trick, and we tell this to all of the sponsors: audit your contracts, your rebate contracts, because they never fully pay.
Right.
You know, there's so much generic information that, you know, well, it didn't say we couldn't charge that, you know. It's not that we said we were going to charge it, but it didn't say we couldn't. So we charge you this fee, this fee, this fee, this fee, this fee, and you're off 30% of the rebates you expected.
Yep. I don't know if you saw the NCPA study said that 34% are potentially closing by the end of the year. And then you just have pharmacy deserts. It's terrible for healthcare.
It's awful. And I said that to a major employer, major CEO of a bank. I'm like, you're in all these small towns, and you're dealing with the big 3 PBM. You're going to be the reason that your town doesn't have a independent pharmacy or a pharmacy at all.
Right.
Yeah, I think everybody realizes it's not a good idea for the captive pharmacies to have a monopoly on pharmacy distribution, and that includes the pharma companies, that includes the employers. I think everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah, relocalizing healthcare is better.
As it should be, as it should be, And we're just getting started. I mean, it's one thing to say what's happening. It's a whole nother thing to do something about it. And I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to be here, because together we can do a lot.